Good afternoon, members. Welcome to this meeting of the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available for viewing through the Council website. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes turning down the volume on your laptop, muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it's intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period or write leave in the Teams chat function, and then join when you rejoin the meeting so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking their time and speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow, and please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. Whew. Okay. So next, I beg your pardon? I'd have to wear a foxy uniform, I think, as well to deliver that. So on to we should really just standardise that and just present it in that way. That's probably a good idea.
For future.
Yeah. It would save us all a lot of typing, I think, as well. Claire, please could you provide the Cedrant and any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. I've got 9 members present, 3 apologies so far from Councillors Brodie, McGregor and Stevenson. 3 members not currently present are Councillors Beretti, Giusti and Ingalls. 5 members currently on Teams being Councillors Campbell, Jordan, Marsh, McCammon and Young. And I should say that since the papers were published, Councillor Hackman has been replaced on this committee by Councillor John Campbell.
Thanks, Claire. Do any members have a declaration of interest they wish to make? No, I don't hear any. So with that, can we go on to the minute of the previous meeting? And can we approve the minutes for the meeting held on 26th of September? Agreed, thank you. That takes us then to the Audit Scotland report, Best Value Thematic Work. And we have Heather here to assist members with any questions. Heather, is there anything you want to say before introducing this?
No, other than we have the external auditors here to take us through the report and the findings of it.
Thank you very much. So over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So we're pleased to be here today to present our best value thematic work. And I'll just reflect on how that fits in with our approach to auditing best value under this current appointment round. For those of you who are familiar with best value auditing, there's been a change in that you don't get a big blockbuster best value assurance report once every 5 years. Instead, the best value audit work is very much integrated with our annual audit work and is reported on an annual basis. And this report that you see before you today is an aspect of the thematic work that the Commission has asked us to do, whereby they've selected a theme based on the risk areas in local government, and they ask all auditors across Scotland to look at that theme at the same point in time so that comparisons can be made and good practice identified, and the national messages out of that will be reported in due course. There is still a Controller of Audit report that is discussed with the Accounts Commission at least once in the 5-year audit appointment, and why particularly our reports are important for you today is that you are part of this year's programme of that reporting. And so in the middle of December, the Controller of Audit will be going to the Commission with her views on overall conclusions on how effectively the Council's demonstrating best value. And those judgments that she's reporting are based on our annual audit report and our thematic work that you see before you today. So it takes on a particular prominence for you this year. So I'll just talk you through the key messages of our thematic report. And so the theme is on the leadership of the development of the new local strategic priorities. So we were looking at how the council went about setting its new plan, and then the arrangements in place that are to actually deliver against that plan. So we're making sure that all the resource plans are aligned with that, and the performance reporting to demonstrate progress against your priorities are in place. So that's very much the focus of the work. And I'm pleased to say that our first conclusion in that leadership have been effective in setting out a clear vision and priorities in the council plan. By leadership, we're referring to the senior officers in the council and also the elected members. So it's how well elected members have worked together and with officers to set that clear vision. We're pleased to note that you have a strong record in community engagement and working with local communities, and indeed you've used that in developing the vision and priorities. Obviously very important to understand what your communities are looking for. The next stage then is to making sure that once those clear priorities are in place, that it's very clear on what you're setting out to do to achieve them. And that's where we comment positively on your annual delivery statement, which sets out the actions to deliver against the strategic outcomes. And also recently, in August and September, the service business plans have been approved, which set out at a service level how each service will contribute to delivery of the priorities. And they are presented to service committees, and indeed progress reports on a 6-monthly basis will report progress against those actions. Of course, it's very important that you have the financial plans in place to deliver against your objectives, and we comment there on the 3-year budget and the Council's strong record in developing and delivering savings for balanced budgets. But we do note that, of course, it's a very challenging time and difficult decisions need to be made on how services are going to be delivered in the future to ensure financial sustainability alongside delivering your priorities. So an important part of that is the change in savings programme, which has been developed across party, and that demonstrates a number of projects that are in place and efficiencies that are planned to help to improve services or to deliver on efficiencies to help secure the services for the future. I think it's important to note that what we're saying here isn't coming as a surprise to anyone, and we see that the leadership in the council very much recognise that an innovative approach needs to be taken into the future when thinking how services can be delivered. So moving on from that, we talk about the performance reporting, and we've noted since our last best value report that there have been improvements in performance reporting, but further development of the performance management framework is planned, and proposals around the new framework are to be presented to members in the new year. So ongoing development there. So an important conclusion for us at point 6 in our key messages is that the Council's leadership demonstrate a collective commitment to best value through self-evaluation and support for continuous improvement. So all of what I've spoken about before shows that the Council are committed, they identify areas where they need to improve and take actions to do that and align resources to fit in with that. There are some areas where we think further improvements could be made, and we mentioned there the benchmarking information that comes out of the local government benchmarking framework, and we report on that later in our annual audit report. And indeed that information, it's a source of comparative information across Scotland, and it also gives family grouping of similar councils that can be used for council comparatives. The Council does use that at an officer level to help to prioritise improvements, but over the last couple of years, the reporting that previously was done to members on that data has not been followed through, and plans are now in place to make sure that that's reintroduced into the future, and officers accept that that's something that will be helpful to helping members understand where the challenges and priorities are for improvement. Just moving on to point 8 of our key messages, and good news around how the Council works well with its planning partners, and particular area of focus that the Commission wanted us to look at were about inequalities and climate emergencies and how councils are prioritising those and deal with them. And we're very pleased to see that, that they're reflected in the council plan in the core set of principles. But we do comment there that the council plan was silent on whether the council was still working towards its target of achieving net carbon emissions in Dumfries by 2025. We made a recommendation that should be clarified, and indeed the Council has confirmed that the cross-party working group on climate change, future targets will be clarified by that group by March 2024, so good progress on that. So our report does include some actions, and they're included at Appendix 1 of the report. I won't go through all of those in detail, but just pleased to say that the Council recognised all of those areas and indeed has agreed actions in response to our recommendations. And indeed, some of the actions have already been implemented. And when we move on to our annual audit report, you'll see that actually the progress made on some of those areas where things have moved on. So yeah, our action plan is at the back of our report. So that's page 38 of our papers, or page 54 of the members' papers. And so I won't go in those in any detail, but we're happy to endorse the actions that the officers have agreed to take in response to those. So that's all I'd like to say at the moment on the report, but we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, for taking us through that. Councillor Dryborough.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Maybe just comments rather than questions. And on the climate change target side of things, the cross-party working group met on Tuesday of this week, and we actually talked about is the target of 2025 actually a good target. We think it was a good target to have to start people thinking about, target zero for climate emergencies. But even the previous environmental champion has said that because everybody's now looking at climate change, when you look at manufacturing, for instance, on vehicles, everybody's asking the manufacturers to deliver those vehicles, and they don't have the opportunity, or should I say, the depth and strength to deliver everybody's vehicles on time. They need to expand all of that type of thing. So I think it's important for us as a cross-party working group to suggest to the E&R committee that we really need to consider what the actual target for zero will be. Now, whether that be 2030, 2035, it'll be up to E&R to come up with that. But I think it's appropriate to say that I think because we had the target 2025, it got people starting thinking differently about reports and where we go from there. But I think it's important as an action we take to E&R committee that we really need to have that discussion on where the zero year is, basically. And we see right across the UK where people are looking at that particular thing. I also think that on item 5, which is the workforce planning, and although it's under review at the moment, we need to consider the restructuring that's going to happen as well. So we'll need to review that as part of that plan as well. So, I mean, thank you very much for the report. I think it's right that what you said, what we are doing. It started off with us in administration with that council plan, and it's moved along quite well, I think. So just a couple of points here, Chair, I think there might be for actions.
No, thanks, Councillor Dryborough. I think also, in terms of the page 55 in our papers, just that the officer working group with members, clearly, as Councillor Dryborough is saying, a lot of thinking and ideas are coming out of that, but ultimately the decision making has to come through the proper decision making bodies such as E&R committee or full council. And I think we have to always continue to observe that, so they can make recommendations, explore the different issues and bring things to light, but ultimately it's a decision-making body that must take decisions. So we'll look forward to that as it comes forward. We've got Councillor John Campbell first on the list. John?
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. First of all, I'd just like to thank those who put the report together. There's a lot of work gone into it, so thank you for that. Just for the interest of accuracy, shall we say, on page 47, and I think it's paragraph 118, where it says 3 separate budget proposals were presented to the meeting from the SNP, Labour and Conservative group. The SNP budget was actually SNP and the independent councillors as part of the administration. It wasn't just an SNP budget on its own. So I'm sure that could be rectified to reflect that point. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. Well spotted, and that is accurate as well. So, so thanks for that. We've now got Councillor Barretti.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just apologies. I had problems getting onto the internet prior to the meeting. For some reason, there was a hiccup in the connection, so I've missed the first part. But I'm glad that Councillor Dryburgh has covered the points that I think we talked about as well. But I just want to take note of page 37, where it does say that the report does say the council plan is silent on whether the council is still working towards its target of achieving net zero emissions in Dumfries and Galloway, which by 2025, which Councillor Dryburgh has alluded to. But then I want to also go forward to page 47, 116, where it says clearly councillors should show a commitment to agreed priorities and work towards achieving them. I just wonder what the auditors think of the fact that more than half of the elected members still have not done carbon literacy training, because that carbon literacy training is fundamental to understanding a lot of the problems which this council agreed to in 2019. And I just wonder what they would have to say about that.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Barretti. I don't know if you want to come in on that particular point. Thank you.
It's not something that we've looked at specifically, the elected members training in that area. And what we would say is that it's down to individual elected members to ensure that they take up the training that's required to enable them to effectively carry out their roles. And of course for the council to have the programmes in place to deliver those programmes. I believe that our work on the general training for elected members identified that the training programme was appropriate and adequate. So, but if there are specific things, I think probably it's more for officers to answer if there's any gaps in that training, or if elected members are not taking that up. I think, you know, the elected members' responsibility to do that.
Thank you. That's maybe something we can reflect on after this in terms of how we might encourage members to participate in that. So next up we've got Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair. It's really just to say this has been a very impressive report. We went into everything in quite a lot of detail, and the work that you've carried out so far has been not only on this, but has been first class. But to back up what Councillor Dryburgh was saying, we do have, you know, the climate change commitment that we've made and declaring an emergency, but it is about formalising how we go forward with that. And one of the things with any target is it's got to be achievable, otherwise it's pointless. So I think taking that forward, and I'm encouraged that people are adopting your recommendations as well, which I'm finding quite encouraging. And a lot of it seems to me to be more about dotting I's and crossing T's, and finally, you know, putting into words what we're potentially doing anyway, but at least it's making it explicit what we're doing and what we should be doing. So it's really more a comment than a question, but thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, mine is just perhaps generalising on the report, but, you know, I'm looking at page 19. The Council has agreed a 3-year budget plan, and most of the issues in there are aligned to that in terms of a 3-year budget plan. And you did say, note that it's challenging times. I just wonder, perhaps, if it's appropriate for you to comment, but just in terms of audit and risk, particularly the risk, given that the announcement that we are moving into a council tax freeze against the budget plan that we set for this year and next year and maybe the following year, just how much of a risk would that put the council at in terms of being able to deliver on all that you've recognised in your audit?
So, yeah, I mean, obviously this report reflects, I suppose, on last year and those actions that were taken forward in this year. But obviously, it's a moving target, and risks do change, and there's things we have to consider. So, how would you respond to that?
So, what I would say is clearly, the news about the council tax freeze came at very short notice. We didn't know about it. You didn't know about it, and it makes planning, particularly into the medium and the long term, even in, the next year, very, very difficult. And at a national level, in our overview reports, we always talk about the importance of longer term stability and funding packages to enable you or any other public sector organisations, the health service or whatever. We always push for longer term financial plans, working with the Scottish Government so that you have some sort of certainty in being able to plan for your sustainability. On the specifics of the council tax, I think it's unknown really what that actually means. There was a commitment to it being funded, but what does that mean? So I'm not clear, you're not clear at the moment what that means, but do recognise all of these sort of uncertainties about any of your financial funding makes it very difficult to plan into the medium term and long term, and so therefore we recognise the importance of you doing different scenario planning and just reviewing these plans into the future as best you can in those circumstances.
If I could come back, Chair, because I think while you say it's on last year's audit, but there's reference to one of the things was climate change as an example. So that's into the future in terms of a target research. So I just want, maybe no wondering, but should we be moving forward as an audit and risk just to say how much of a risk this has on the council budget and setting the 3 year and what really will be at risk? And I don't know if audit and risk play a part in making that known to government on making that announcement. Short notice as it was, I think it was a knee-jerk reaction when it was announced, but nevertheless it's been made. And what's the impact? What's the risk on this council, and indeed any others, but this in particular, this is the one that we represent, just to move forward and put that to full council or whatever to say this is the risk this council now runs.
So, I mean, yeah, it's a very salient point, but I think equally we don't know. I think is the up to, and it has to work through a process, and I know there's various discussions happening at COSLA and at senior level, etc. So, while the statement's maybe been made and it's in the public realm, if you like, there's no agreement or detail as to how that would actually work yet. So I think until we can quantify the risk, it might be difficult to articulate how best to approach it other than a general cloud of worry. But I'll hand over to Vlad to maybe speak to that in terms of the process, the best process to take that forward.
Thank you, Chair. I think the important part is that we've got a budget setting process which will absolutely look at all the risks around this, and obviously that'll be led through Paul Garrett's offices as Section 95 officer. We're very clear as officers, obviously we have to identify any risks in terms of the budget setting process, and that's one of them, because obviously we were looking at long-term process for increasing council tax in particular, and therefore that might not be the case moving forward, but that will be addressed through that budget setting process. And obviously we've got a budget panel that will specifically be looking at these items and risks, and then obviously reporting through the right process for full council.
Okay, thanks, Vlad. Councillor Johnson, do you want to come in?
It was really just on that point from Councillor Scobie, and ultimately the risk we're talking about here is the risk that we don't have control over our income. It's a much wider risk that we are at the mercy, perhaps, of decisions made in Holyrood and made at Westminster as well. And that's the big risk. We've now got control. I'll just leave it there.
You're almost making a case for. All right, Councillor Dryborough.
Yeah, and I was on certainly my group's leaders at COSLA last night talking about the democratic deficit that's actually happened over the last number of years. Not just, as you say, not just by Scottish Government, UK Government as well, making decisions where we have as influence on us, but nobody talks to us beforehand when the decision's actually been made. And it's just a ridiculous situation to actually be in, because we have been elected to run the council in our terms, but we keep on getting all these policy decisions made for us that do affect our budget. And I think certainly the budget panel the other day were talking about how much is this actually going to cost us, and also about what's the compensation for the Scottish Government. Now, they always say we're going to give you compensation, but it's never as much as what it is when... And the council tax itself, it doesn't just affect the council tax, it affects everything else that we actually do, because we talk about the council tax and we talk about the changes that are required to put the savings or cuts in place for the council. So it's definitely a big talking point right across the local authorities in Scotland.
Yeah, and I think, maybe just to add to that, but I think we did have some confidence that there would be a maybe new way of working between local authorities and the Scottish Government, and obviously that's a work in progress still, evidently. But I think even future planning, we had an assumption about what our indicative future council tax could have been, and we might be looking at decisions from elsewhere that affect those working assumptions. But equally, I suppose some elected members might choose to want to have a very high council tax or a very low council tax. So it's even on those assumptions, depending on what you wish for, you have to be careful, because you might end up getting a settlement that turns out to be better than what you would have put in place, or one that's worse than the assumptions you've already got. So it's until we know more, I think we have to just work on a day-to-day basis of risk assessment in terms of the finances, because we're all in it together ultimately. Are there any other questions for the report itself? I think that'll maybe do for that one just now, but I think we should maybe commend the good work, because it is a very clear report. I think the recommendations and the key points are very clear in terms of taking them forward, and we would expect to see those come through the relevant committees. So I think with that, if we go to the recommendations, so we've tacitly, retrospectively agreed to receive a presentation from Audit Scotland. So thank you for that. And also, if we're happy to note and consider the key messages for improvement contained in the report, and there's a couple of points there just in terms of encouraging where we can maybe members to take up carbon literacy training, and also the factual correction about the budgets and the independent groups representation there. And I think there was some general comments about climate, and also the relevance of the restructuring that Councillor Dryburgh mentioned as well, and as well as the looming issues around council tax and how that's going to look. Councillor Scobie, finally.
Yeah, Chair, it's just on 2.2 and to the very things we don't know what we don't know, but we do know what announcement was made. And any, when you look at 2.2, noting and consider the key messages and improvement actions, well, this is very, the announcement was very much putting in difficulty any improvements. Not, in terms of audit and risk, and notwithstanding what Vlad said about process, it's really, the role of the audit and risk. Maybe, and I have no doubt it's already flagged up, as Vlad says, officers are talking about it, the budget panel's talking about it. Is there a role in terms of audit and risk looking at this, and even emergency meeting or whatever, just to look at this, because improvements isn't going to, if it drops to a zero budget, cap on the council tax at 0%, that's going to have massive implications for this council.
No, and I think the point's well made. I think we're limited in scope, maybe what we can do here, but I think I think it's taken on board that obviously it's an area of concern, and we are collectively across the council looking at whether it's budget or other processes, how we factor that in, but until we know what that looks like, obviously it's going to be very late in the day, I think, until we get a final settlement in terms of budget. But 21st of December, I think, was the last date I'd heard. But if we can at least put that on the list of potential things or areas to look at, but I'd imagine our finances...
Even if we recognise in the recommendation that it is something that we're conscious of.
I think if we just capture it, because it's really out with the business of this particular item, but I think if we capture the comments, I think that's probably fair enough, if that's okay with everybody. Okay, thank you. So that's item 4. That then takes us on to item 5, which is the report on external audit on the 2022-23 audit of Dumfries Galloway Council. You'll have got the additional appendix, hopefully, which is a sort of slim document that came a wee bit later, which is the covering letter from Audit Scotland and forms part of the presentation from the external auditors, and that's contained in Appendix 1. It says here, Paul Garrett and Gillian Ross are here to assist if members have any questions. I don't see them unless they're on the call. Oh, sorry, there's Gillian. So I don't know if Paul or Gillian wants to add anything at this point before we move on to debate. Gillian?
Nothing further to add, Chair. Just the external auditors will take us through the report as they have done with the base value one, and they'll point out all the outcomes of the audit, which internally within finance and accounts we think is a very good position for the council. So I'll leave you to Fiona.
Okay, thank you. So firstly, to do it properly the way around this time, do we agree to receive the external auditor's report? Okay, thank you. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I will start off with the extra agenda paper. So that's the covering letter, and that just sets out that we've concluded our audit for the year. It summarises the fact that we're presenting to you today our annual audit report, which includes all our findings on all areas of the audit. And it concludes on the fact that we have no unadjusted misstatements in the accounts that need to be corrected. So the accounts that are part of the package today that you're being asked to approve and will be signed off, you can feel comfortable that we're happy for you to do that. Also part of that letter is the audit opinion, and I'll talk about that in a few moments with the annual audit report. And there's a letter of representation that Paul Garrett provides to us as part of the final piece of the audit assurance jigsaw, if you like, on the accounts. And that lays out in writing the basis on which Paul has prepared the accounts. And it's nothing unusual or nothing to be concerned about. That's just a procedural part of the closure of the accounts process. So then if I move on to our annual audit report, and particularly on the key messages, and that's at page 65 of your papers. And the very important point at point 1 is that an unmodified or an unqualified or a clean auditor's report has been issued for 22-23. So that means that we feel that the accounts show a true and fair view of the council's position. They've been appropriately prepared in accordance with all the financial regulations and guidance. So that's really important news for you. And that should never be underestimated, the work that Paul and Gillian and the team do to get to that point. So it's great to be able to report that. There are also no misstatements above our reporting threshold that we were required to bring to your attention, and that's very unusual, so that's very good news as well. There are some improvements that we've identified throughout the audit, and we've reflected those where they're significant enough in the action plan at the back of our report. But we're satisfied with all the management actions that are going to be taken to make sure those improvements are made for future years' accounts. So I won't go through those in detail at the moment. The rest of that page then reflects on the best value work that I've just already presented the report to you earlier. So you'll see there the conclusion on best value and the section on vision and leadership. Very familiar with the points that I've just already presented, so I won't go through those again. But moving on to page 66 and financial management, and this is where we reflect on the financial position that is shown in the accounts for the year. And that lays it out there. And what we say is that overall there's been a small reduction in usable reserves, and that reserves sit at £101 million. At the end of March. We've concluded that there are appropriate and effective financial management processes in place to manage budgets and regular budget monitoring reports provided to elected members to allow scrutiny of the council's finances. So that's very important in terms of the questions there raised by councillors about how comfortable are we with new information that comes to light on things that affect the council's finances. So we feel that the procedures are robust. We reflect at point 11 on the capital expenditure and that it was broadly in line with the expenditure expected on the programme. But there are delays in a number of capital projects for very valid reasons. But one of the action plan points that we raised was that we recommend that council reports on capital projects include updates around timelines of project delivery. They've always included details of cost, but we also feel that timelines are appropriate to be included, and indeed there's a commitment that that will be done going forward. Our section on financial sustainability is where we look forwards and about the robustness of the plans into the medium term, and we're comfortable there that the financial plans are aligned to the council plan. And that the change and savings programme is also aligned and is an important driver in making sure that you can deliver the efficiencies that are required to maintain services into the future. And of course, the changes that have been made to the financial situation for the council in terms of anything such as council tax or pay settlements, they're things that we expect to be built into future financial plans, and if we felt they weren't appropriately addressed, we would report those in our next reports, which would be considered by this committee. At the bottom of that page, we talk about the governance and the changes in the administration since the local government elections, but we also reflect on the changes that are planned for the senior leadership team, and we mentioned those in the report. And we note the council's reasons for making those change. Importantly, we conclude that appropriate governance and decision-making arrangements are in place in the council. Just moving on to page 67, and we have a section, what we call the use of resources to improve outcomes, and that's where we look at the performance reporting of service performance. And I mentioned before that there's a performance management framework in place and improvements are being made to that, and importantly a focused suite of indicators to report progress against the council's strategic outcomes is something that will be coming in the new year. We reflect there on the annual service performance reports that are produced by the council, and that they show that many of the performance targets set by the council are on track to be achieved. We also looked at the local government benchmarking framework for the year and commented there on the about half of service indicators show that there's an improving position over time. But we do note there that while 40% of national indicators are in the top quartiles of councils, this has fallen from the past when it was 56%. And we think because of those changes and because of different contexts of the service performance information produced by the council and the national data, it's important that local government benchmarking framework is discussed with members and not just used by officers. And officers have given us a commitment that local government benchmarking framework will become part of the suite of reporting to members in the future. We feel that will help you to compare yourself with others and also to focus on the areas where you need to make change or where you could learn lessons from other councils. Our final point there is just that the website needs to be updated with that shows you public performance reporting. So this is where the service performance that is reported to the public, and that some of the information in there needs to be kept up to date. And there are some areas where the information needs to be expanded to comply with the statutory performance information direction. The council produces lots of information, but it's just making sure it's very clear and up to date, and it's targeted to meet the expectations of that direction. And we've got an improvement action in our report that details what we'd expect to be done to achieve that. Lots of good news in there, and also areas for improvement. I'm pleased to say that the council recognises those, and in our action plan from page 113 in your papers, we lay out those actions together with the agreed management actions and the proposed timing for those improvements to be made. and we're comfortable with both the actions and those timescales. I think that's all I'll say in terms of my summary, but happy to answer any questions on the report. Thank you.
Thanks again, Fiona. And I think we're wouldn't be saying anything out of school that we're very lucky with the diligence and consistency of our Section 95 officer and his team. So I think that's I think we should recognise that. Councillor Dryborough.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And it's just coming back on the last part, the use of resources, and talk about the LGBF. We often say when we're away to other groups that deal with local authorities that not one size fits all. And obviously we have a family of councils through the local government benchmarking framework. I'm presuming when you say dealing with that and try to get to where they are, it's within that family of councils as opposed to the 32 local authorities, because we have that family group, don't we?
Yes, I think it's for the council to decide which use of the data is most appropriate for its circumstances. It might be that at a national level, the councillors welcome just an analysis that the broad brush like we've put there. How many quartiles in the top quartiles. But when it comes to actually identifying councils that you might want to learn from, often the family groupings are appropriate. I know sometimes councils will say to us, "Oh, well, we don't think that council's the right one. Another one is." Well, that's fine. If you're making those informed decisions, we're happy for you to do that, to use it in the way that's most appropriate for you. But what's important is this is a really good source of information from which you can learn for improvement areas for yourselves, but also where you can learn from others.
Thank you. Councillor John Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks very much for the report. I'm looking at page 66 under the financial sustainability, and you touched on I think it was number 15, about the capital programmes. For example, there's been a number of things that have been delayed as well. For example, flood prevention schemes, DLT2, we've got the additional support need. There's a number of capital programmes there for one reason or another that has never been taken forward or are slow to be taken forward. Now, the longer, this is just my view, the longer we leave these capital programmes, the more expensive they become. And it looks to me as if that could be a significant risk. I'm just wondering what the thoughts on the audit team are on those points. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. So, there is, I think one of the things you did reflect positively was the fact that additional information, if there was delays, reasons were given, etc. But there is a point about, despite all that, the costs do go up and maybe impact on the deliverability. So is there a comment on that?
Yes, there can be very good reasons why capital projects are delayed, but we think it's important that elected members understand what those reasons are, and part of that is understanding where timelines have moved on capital projects. So that's why we've made the recommendation that should be part of the reporting on all capital projects, and officers have agreed that will be built into future reporting.
And just on the point about the capital project at the start of that might cost A, and then as time goes on it costs A plus X, as it were. That in itself, while you might have a good reason or a change in timeline, would affect the deliverability in terms of the finances, which we've already touched upon, I suppose. So is that something you capture?
It's not something that we have considered, but clearly it is a risk if there's a delay, and we know particularly recently costs of completing capital projects have been increasing with inflation, so that is a valid risk, and we'd expect it's something that's considered in progress reporting to members when they're considering what aspects of the capital programme are prioritised and progress going forward.
Thanks, Fiona. Sorry, Vlad, do you want to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to add, for the purposes of this committee, the council-wide risks, which are our corporate risks, includes major projects within that, and obviously timeline and delivery within that, and the impact on cost is also captured there.
Thank you. Does that assist Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, it does to a point, but I still feel that the longer we delay certain capital projects, the greater the risk will be. But again, that's just my own personal view. Thank you.
No, and I'll probably give the same answer to other members, but ultimately this is looking back. This is a reflective report, so while we can probably see problems coming in the future, we have to kind of deal with where we're at today, I suppose. Councillor Barretti.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at page 101, 5, Vision, Leadership and Governance, and the second line down it says, Council has agreed changes to the Council's senior leadership arrangements which will become effective 1st of April. I'm happy to be corrected, but I thought that we had agreed to revise it and look at it, which could become effective 1st of April. Am I incorrect?
If memory serves, I think we agreed that those would be implemented, but we would review it after 9 months in terms of the progress. I've got the convener in the room here, but I'll let Vlad come in first and then Malcolm if you want to come in after.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, no, the decision for the Council was the new arrangements which will come in place as of the 1st of April 2024, so I think that statement's correct. In terms of there'll be ongoing reviews of that and reporting by the Chief Exec to elected members through full Council, but also the other part of that jigsaw which members will be aware through the review of standing order subcommittees, the scheme of delegations that will need to be obviously addressed in terms of aligning it to that decision. But the implementation date still remains as the 1st of April 2024.
Thanks, Vlad. Hope that's helpful. I'll bring in Councillor Johnson, Councillor Barrett, if that's okay, because I think he's maybe an inside track on this.
Thank you, Chair. It's exactly as Vlad highlighted. The decision was to implement the restructure from April 1st of next year with our review of performance after 9 months back to full Council. But as Vlad is saying, we've got to go through a review of standing orders. We need to look at schemes and delegations where the new committee structure fits in. So there's an awful lot of work to be done in the meantime.
Yeah, is it okay if I come back in, Chair?
Yes, no, come back in, Councillor Barretti.
I think that the statement's fine, but I think it would have been also useful to have had that little extra there just to show that there is actually further work and it's not just one action, because that review does show that we're not, we are looking at this proactively. Yeah,
I mean, it would be accurate to say that that's what we're doing. I think that's certainly the intention. So I don't know if that's a minor amendment we could capture, given that the Council's decided that quite recently. So thanks for that, Councillor Barretti. Councillor Johnson, did you want to speak on another matter as well?
It's actually just one of these really tedious nitpicking points, and it's in the actual accounts. And it's when you look at previous councillors' salaries and pension contributions, it refers to they were in post until we're talking about the previous leaders, not those previous leaders, the one before you. It's page 191. Were imposed from 1st of April 2023 until the elections on 5th of May. Well, the elections were in 2022, so it should be April 1st, 2022. And it's the same for the pensions part of it on page 195. It's item 4 on 191.
Sorry, Chair, it's probably one for Gillian to...
Yeah, Gillian or Andrew to answer, because they're not our accounts.
No, absolutely. So is that something, Gillian, that you're able to pick up on, just to double check for accuracy, just in dates, to satisfy Councillor
Yeah.
Johnson.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, just to confirm, that does sound like a typo, and we will amend that prior to the signing of the accounts.
Thank you very much. Well spotted. So any further questions on the report in front of us? I don't see any in the room or online, so I think with that, we'll go to the recommendations. We've received the report. I think we've commended our finance team, I think just as a matter of course. If we're happy to then approve the letter of representation to be certified by the Head of Finance and Procurement, happy to agree? Approve, thank you. And 3, approve the audited accounts, which will be certified by the Head of Finance and Procurement and Audit Scotland after this meeting, as detailed at Appendix 3. Agreed, thank you. And finally, 4, to note that the certified accounts will be made available to all members before the 30th of November 2023, when they'll be available on the Council's website as detailed. Happy to note? Great stuff, thank you. I've not been notified of any further business. Thanks for your attendance today and all your contributions. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.